what is the millennial reign of Christ and when is it going to happen? Let's talk about it on today's Commute Conversation. So there is this area of Christian theology that is known as eschatology, and what it has to do is the study of the end times from a biblical standpoint. And believe it or not, up until about 7 or 8 years ago, I thought that the view of eschatology or of end times that I grew up with and had been familiar with for all those years was the only reference point that there was out there. But to my shock, I found out that there are actually other views of eschatology, and the thing that makes those so interesting is that they have Bible verses for their viewpoints as well. So it got me to thinking about that. I want to talk about it on today's Commute Conversation. And today I want to talk about the Millennial Reign of Christ. Now what that refers to is the book of Revelation talks about the fact that there's going to come a day where Jesus is going to rule and reign on the earth for 1,000 years. Now, there are several different viewpoints about this that actually I have found to be very interesting. Now, the view that I grew up with and knew was one called Premillennialism. And basically, Premillennialism takes Revelation, what it says there, very literally. Now, Revelation is a very figurative book, but it takes that part very literally and says that Jesus is going to physically return to this earth, and after that he is physically going to reign on this earth for 1,000 actual years. That is the premillennial viewpoint. So that is what I've been accustomed to and what I've heard all up, like I said, until 7 or 8 years ago. And that is the premillennial viewpoint. And that means that the return of Christ and the millennial reign is something that's all going to happen in the future. It's not happened yet, but it's coming. It's on the horizon. I found out later that there is a second viewpoint, and that second viewpoint is called Amillennialism. And I know I'm probably going to not get all the nuances of this position exactly right, but I'm going to try to do my best. So basically, they believe that the return of Jesus has pretty much kind of happened, and that his reign is not necessarily a physical reign on this earth, but that his reign is a spiritual one, and that at the end of this age, Jesus is going to come and he's going to just wrap everything up. So it takes also a very relative approach towards the 1,000 years itself, saying that yes, since the book of Revelation is figurative, we can take this 1,000 years and make it figurative for a very long period of time. So it may not be this spiritual reign that Jesus has, may not be exactly 1,000 years, it could be much longer. So that is the basic high view, high level view of amillennialism. And here's the third one. The third one, this is one that's kind of enamored me and surprised me here the last several years, and there's this idea of postmillennialism. In postmillennialism, most people believe that Jesus already returned and is already ruling in his kingdom, and that his return in judgment was in AD 70 when the temple was destroyed. And then they believe that that is when the reign of Christ on this earth began. Now, it started off very small as mostly a spiritual reign, but what postmillennialism tends to say is that over a period of time, again, 1,000 years is just figurative. That 1,000 year could very well be longer than that because it's already been 1,000 years since 70 AD. It's been all 2,000 years, nearly. But they believe that Jesus is going the world is gradually going to accept the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that the majority of the world is going to have ups and downs through long centuries, long millennia of time, but eventually the whole world, for the most part, is going to bow its knee to Jesus Christ, and then Jesus will come and wrap things up and we'll enter into eternity. So that's the basics of those three views. There's premillennialism, amillennialism, and then postmillennialism. Now here's the thing about it. What tends to happen with premillennialism, it doesn't have to be this way, but this is what the tendency can be, is that it kind of can give you a pessimistic look at the way things are in the world right now, because for the premillennialists, they believe that things are going to get really, really bad, and then Jesus is going to come back. Now, there's some different thoughts about this little thing called the tribulation, which we'll talk about in another video. But they believe it's going to get really, 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 really bad, and then Jesus is going to come back and start his reign, and everything will be peace and happiness. But the problem with that is, it means as they look around, the worse things get in the world, the more, it's just making the coming of Jesus that much closer. So it can tend to make people sit back and not really get involved in the Christian fight and spreading the gospel and being involved in the world the way that Jesus would have us to, being salt and light. It can tend towards that. And then there's the amillennial standpoint, which it can be a little bit pessimistic too, because it has come in some of those overtones of things are going to get really, really bad, and then Jesus is going to come at the end and fix it all, and we'll enter into eternity. But the thing that I think makes the post-millennial viewpoint a little bit different is the fact that it's kind of a more optimistic eschatology. In other words, it says things are gradually going to get better, and gradually more and more of the world is going to come under the physical reign of Jesus Christ, because of the majority of the world through the course of many, many thousands of years is eventually going to bow its knee to Jesus. And so it has a viewpoint that things are getting better, and that we don't necessarily need to look around at all the terrible things happening and just give up. But no, it's going to get better. The world is going to bow its knee to Jesus Christ. Now, on the flip side, there are people out there who I'm sure who are the premillennial and amillennial standpoints that would automatically say, well, I don't feel that way. It's not pessimistic about that. And it kind of reminded me, I was listening to a round table with a bunch of theologians here a few years ago talking about this concept of eschatology. And the person that was heading that discussion was John Piper. And John Piper, listening to all these different perspectives, he just stepped out there and said, hey, I just want to be an optimillennialist. That's what I want to be. Now, he holds more to the premillennial viewpoint, but he said, I want to be an optimillennialist. I want to look for the good things happening in the world. And I will tell you this, if you want to ask what my particular viewpoint is, I tend to lean more towards the optimistic view of the premillennial standpoint. Now, if you're here and you have a different idea about it, why don't you let us know in the comments? Tell us about maybe what you agree with the different standpoints, what you disagree with. Keep everything respectful, please. But if you want to discuss that, let's do it in the comments down here, and you can leave there what your take or what your position on that might be. Now, if you want to be notified of future videos that we may have, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the bell down there as well so that you can be notified when we had a new video. That is, if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, just follow our Facebook page, Grace Truths, and you can be notified there on your news feed when we have new videos come out, more commute conversations and other Bible study videos that we'll have coming out soon. But in the meantime, go and serve the Lord with gladness, and we will talk to you next time. Goodbye.